I don't think there's an inherent tension between a liberal international order and an Asian century. I'll maybe come back to that a little bit, but I think it matters a lot in terms of what we understand as this liberal international order. I would say in maybe the most extreme form, which is probably post-Cold War, the idea that in maybe some significant ways, national sovereignty would actually be overridden by global institutions. We talk about things like the extension of human rights and democratic governance as a matter of principle, of right to protect, for instance, international law. I think the truth of the matter is that kind of view of a liberal international order has never really been one that's in practice been widely accepted anyway. Among some member states of the EU, there has been the voluntary surrender of sovereignty to supranational or international bodies, but even in the West, I don't think that view has ever really been accepted by states and is certainly not accepted outside of the West. Now, what you talked about in your opening comments, more the post-war period of not a surrendering of sovereignty, but institutions that embody an ongoing cooperative approach to sovereignty. International economic institutions like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, certain established practices, United Nations, international security through the Security Council. I think we can say that there's been some erosion of that. I'm not sure we can point that to an Asian phenomenon. There are countries in parts of the world that are and forces that are questioning some aspects of traditional international cooperation, certainly in the trade area. There have been well-known incidents of countries, how do I put it, try to put it diplomatically, of countries kind of ignoring established international rules in terms of some aspects of their foreign policy. I think, for example, of some of the Chinese activities in the South China Sea, Russian activities in Ukraine, and for that matter, I think you'd put the American invasion of Iraq in a similar kind of category. But as I say, I don't think that this may be in some jeopardy, but I don't think we've seen that order erode. I think that by and large, the states of the world today understand that the health of the global economy and international security depend on a high degree of cooperation, on a fairly high degree of respect for institutions, and a fairly high degree of cooperative practice. I think the exceptions are there. I think there's some reason to be concerned about the Chinese exception. I do think we see, whether it's the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, some of Chinese approaches to trade. I mentioned the South China Seas. I do think we see a bit of a shift from the post-war order as defined by rules and institutions, albeit American-led, to a Chinese order that is more explicitly simply about Chinese national interest. It's not a radical change, but I think it's something we should be concerned about or should watch. The third interpretation, maybe not the word liberal, but of international order, is simply the old Westphalian interpretation of guiding principles of state sovereignty. And beyond some of the military things I mentioned, I think the one and only real challenge to that kind of order is, frankly, jihadism, which is a pre-Westphalian notion that there are transcendental values that need to be imposed outside and beyond the state system, and even the state system itself should be abolished. Now, look, obviously west of India, parts of Western Asia, Northern Africa, I think we see this as a very real concern in certain regions. And obviously the threat of global terrorism, particularly jihadist terrorism, is something that affects all of us. But is this actually a threat to the world order as a whole? I think we realistically have to say not. Big security concern, but not a threat to the order. So, and let me just wrap this up in terms of what does the rise of Asia do to the liberal world order? Does it threaten it or not? I think it maybe threatens to transform the power relationships, not in ways that should fundamentally endanger the order, but I think it makes a big difference who leads that. I think, to be blunt here, if it's strictly China as the emerging power, I think there are more threats to the liberal aspect of the world order than, say, if it's a free and democratic society like India that is also playing a major role in the power structures of the future.